Okay, so the first little bit of this review, I'm not going to spoil the major premise of the movie because I think it's quite interesting and might be better for you to experience it on your own. And then later on, I'll talk a bit more about the premise, but I'll warn you when I do. So at first, the movie sets up this great vibe where we have all these things jumbled together. We have rap music and dubstep, this uncontrolled teenage depravity and sexuality, and these sexualized exercise classes. We have a dead animal that they find. We have sinister music playing while he tickles his son, and all these things are just jammed together in this almost montage that makes you feel very unsettled and off balance, and you really don't know where the movie's going to go, but you're excited and you really want to know. And then we figure out our premise, and the movie really kicks into high gear, and the person behind it, he worked on the movie Crank, and you really get that same vibe of just adrenaline, high energy, lots of cool music, fast cuts, and just this constant pace. But then I do feel that eventually the movie starts to slow down, and I think it does run out of steam a little bit. We get this cool premise, we get some really cool scenes exploring this premise, but I can't help but feel that towards the latter half of the movie, we run out of steam a little bit. There's this long standoff scene that I just don't think is that interesting, went on way too long. All the social commentary that I thought was really interesting towards the start. At one point, the teacher is talking about planned obsolescence, and it's just all that social commentary just completely dropped off the map. So I was a little disappointed. I felt like the movie had a lot of more potential at the start and a lot more things it could have explored, and it just kind of didn't really go where I wanted it to go. Nicolas Cage was great. He's threading that line between unhinged, demented axe murderer and back when I was young, talk with his son, and he's able to thread that line perfectly. And then Selma Blaire gives a surprisingly haunting, emotional performance that I thought was really interesting. There are some great gory moments. At one point, a guy gets a hanger through his cheek, and I feel like this movie could have been a great, terrifying, scary horror movie, but it didn't really fully commit to that. I feel like it tried to do three different things. It tried to be a scary, terrifying horror movie. It tried to be a dark comedy, a very funny movie, and it also tried to be an emotional, a heartfelt movie. And I think to pull off all three of those different things, you have to have a great movie, an almost perfect movie, and I feel like this movie just wasn't that, and thus it didn't really hit any of those marks and was a bit disappointing. So I do think this was a good movie, definitely better than average, definitely worth a watch, but everyone arguing that it's iconic and it's going to be a classic and people are going to go back and watch it again and again, I don't think this movie is going to have that much longevity ultimately, and I think it's going to be remembered as, I think there's going to be better movies that eclipse it because the concepts it's playing with and the ideas are really interesting, but I think another director and another cast, not another cast like they'll do a better job, but another director, another cast will come and make a better movie, and that'll be the classic of this, I can't even say genre, of this type of movie. Okay, now I'm going to talk about the premise. So there will be a spoiler of the premise of the movie. Basically, a signal comes through televisions when people are watching a certain channel, and it rewires or screws up something in their brain, so rather than wanting to protect their kids, they want to kill their kids. And this creates so many interesting things in the movie. The best example was when immediately a mother gives birth and immediately she goes and wants to kill her newborn child. That was when it was at its most chilling. And then also it was funny when there's the pundits talking on the news and trying to rationalize it. Oh, actually, this is common in the animal kingdom. 50% of pig fatalities are when a mother kills pre-weaning infants. And then someone's horrified, like, well, that's pigs, that's not humans. And then it's like, well, animals are animals. So we do get some genuinely funny examples of exploring this and some genuinely chilling ones. And that's where I say I think this movie had great potential to be an all-time great movie. There's a really sad moment when one character's father, he's such an asshole that at first he can't even tell whether he has a virus that's trying to get him to murder him or whether he's just drank a little too much and this is just his normal behavior. That was really sad. And there's this great moment where Nicolas Cage, his dad, is like, or Nicolas Cage calls his dad a dinosaur, and then his dad's like, I fought in wars, you little shit. And it was those moments that, again, just made you feel where this kind of intergenerational conflict movie, where all the things that, you know, boomers hate about millennials and the greatest generation hates about boomers, all those things that they think, and all these stereotypes that are always just bubbling below the surface and aren't always said, just come bubbling out in the most horrible ways possible. You see all these different ways that parents can be frustrated with their children. There's the jealousy angle, where parents feel insecure around their kids, like they're going to be eclipsed, and why would I want to have a kid who's just going to make me look bad? Then there's the disgust angle where the kids are different than their parents and in ways that seem immoral, and parents look at their kids and see them doing things that they would never do, and they're just disgusted by the new generation. That's such a common theme. And then there's also the resentment that you've put your dreams on hold and sacrificed so much for your children, and then they always don't seem particularly appreciative. So there's all these different factors at play. And again, the movie, it explores them to an extent, but I thought it could do more. And then Selma Blaire's character has this great monologue where she talks about how, especially as a woman, having a kid is built up so much throughout your life, and it's talked about so much and it's hyped up, that when it finally happens, it can't help but be a bit of a disappointment and a letdown, because there's no way it could live up to these high expectations we have. So in some ways, our culture, which puts so much emphasis on motherhood and parenting, it sets it up for failure to an extent, because when you finally have a child, you can't help but be a little disappointed that it's not this magical thing that everyone said it is. So all in all, this is a good movie. A little disappointing. I feel like it didn't really tap out its potential that was there. And Brian Taylor, he's the director. It's not as good as Crank. I think that's still his best work, but way better than Jonah Hex. Way better than Ghost Rider, Spirit of Vengeance. That one was so bad, it was almost funny at times how bad it was. So this was a pretty good showing for him, but I still think there's more there.